I'm going to stretch. So I figured I'd share some flexibility routines and just my favorite stretches to do post-workout. Long time ago, like 5 years ago, maybe a little bit more, I did a long tutorial or follow along stretch routine, but haven't done one since. So I thought I'd update with some of the new stretches that I have that I just love to do. That gets me feeling really good after a workout and pretty much just helps me feel limber, helps reduce some of that lactic acid. So I'm gonna share and you guys can follow along, comment, ask questions, things like that. But we're gonna start super simple. We're gonna start lower body, ankles, and just kind of work our way up to the neck and the head. First though, we're just gonna start with ankles. This one's super simple. I flatten my feet behind me and I literally just sit down on them. And then all I'm gonna do from there is just kind of lean back. As I lean back, I feel that nice stretch on the top of my feet, right where the bridges of the feet connect to the ankles. And I'm going to come forward, curl those toes under, turn sideways a little bit for you, and just kind of sit back on them heels. And if you want to get a little bit more flexibility, you can come back. Here, I like to see if I can get feet flat. And then I just repeat. 3 times for me is usually pretty good because I don't need to spend too much time on the ankles. But if you feel like your ankles are really tight, take a little bit more time. But ankles, if we walk on our ankles, we stand on our ankles, we run on our ankles, everything we do upright usually takes our ankles, and more flexibility, less chance you have of rolling an ankle, more strength you can develop after getting some of the flexibility, working on mobility, things like this through the movement, balance between tension and relaxation. Then we're gonna go into the calves. For the calves, my favorite stretch is including a wall. So what I do is I find a wall like this, and then I just pretty much, I get my heel as close as I can get to the corner. And then I just kind of lean in towards the wall. If you get like a brace, something you can like grab onto and pull yourself closer, that's fine. And I just kind of turn my hips towards the side. That starts to get this inner part of the calf. If I turn my hips towards the other side, I get the outer part of the calf. And this one is just great for the calves. There's a lot of different calf stretches you can do, but this one seems to always be the most intense with the least effort. And you get to control the intensity. It's not like instant pain from the stretch, but it brings a lot of relief as you loosen that tension. Ugh. Then from the calves, we're gonna get into the hamstrings. So this one can be kind of like a multi-hamstring and calf stretch. Maybe even a little bit of hips too, since we're gonna get into there. But I start with a kneel. I don't want that back foot to be linear. I'll turn it kind of sideways a little bit. And I'm gonna push my hips to get as close as I can to that front heel, just driving in. Now here, if you can't get this connection here where they're touching, you might not feel much of a calf stretch. You'll probably feel it more in the hamstrings. But if you can get this far, what I like to do is really, I keep that foot flat, but I really push and add more pressure on the top and don't let that heel come up. I keep that heel flat and just add a little bit of pressure. However, if you want to get some of the hips, then I would think about sinking lower, really dropping deeper into the floor. And then to get that hamstring, as I rock back, use your hands for support if you need to. I'm going to shift back as far as I can, rolling this foot to the back of the heel, trying to point my toes towards my face. And sometimes just locking this knee out or just kind of pushing it down to straighten it out nice and not like completely locked, but enough to where you feel some of that stretch. You don't have to go folding completely in half, but from here all you really need to do is just kind of push your butt back away and kind of let your body straighten out and just kind of let your solar plexus guide the way leaning forward. And then 2 more times, hips forward, get the hips as close as I can to the heel, add a little bit of pressure for that calf. Rock back. This is where we get into some of the mobility bits, but flexibility and mobility can come hand in hand really nicely. One more time, forward and back before we switch sides. And these are literally just the stretches I do if I'm on a crunch. If I don't have a lot of time, I just need to crush some stretching out. I do this with my students as well, just to keep them limber. Sometimes I'll do this in the beginning. If you're doing it after a workout, you can literally take a lot more time kind of just sitting in that static position. But if you're stretching before a workout, I recommend dynamic stretching, not staying too long, but doing more in, out, back and forth, just because it's better. And your muscles, they're cold. They're not warm before a workout. After the workout, you got your blood flowing, your muscles are warm. So static is a little bit better. And personally, I feel like it's nicer because after that heart rate's going and you're just breathing through the stretches and you kind of exhale, sink a little bit deeper. It makes a bigger difference post-workout. One more. Let's see if I can adjust. Key here though is just to build some kind of consistency. I guess discipline probably comes first before consistency, but with discipline, consistency can come. But hardest part with that is prioritizing enough to implement it into your daily routine. In this stretch too, if you're not feeling much, like if you're really flexible, you can grab that toes at the ball of the foot and kind of pull and add a little bit more pressure on top of the knee, just above, not the knee itself, but the quad right above the knee. And then just kind of push your stomach down, and then you can literally get flat, really get a deep stretch. For most, that's probably not as far as you'll end up wanting to go, but it's usually pretty good. From there, we're gonna hit deeper in the hips. I like to do this from a push-up position. If you need some support, go ahead and put your knees down. Otherwise, you can keep them up. But I'm gonna bring one foot up by my hands, and I'm literally just gonna drop my hips down low. Now for here, there's two different ways you can do this. If I wanna focus on this hamstring here, you can let that knee drop, and I'm just gonna try and get inner elbow down, other elbow down. Here is really nice just on that inner hamstring, on that one that's up in front. But if I wanna target the hip that's in the back, then I keep that knee up, and then I'm gonna lift my chest up and push the hips forward. This one is intense on that hip, but if after a workout, especially if you really work a lot of mobility on the hips, a lot of strength in the legs, this one's really good. And then switch, same deal, other side. Starting to push up like position, bring that foot up here, and then again, set that knee down if you want that extra support. Otherwise, keep it up. Inner elbow down first, outer elbow. For those who maybe this isn't challenging you enough, just get that hand on that inner knee and literally push it out to the outside. That one can get real intense. So it doesn't take much here, but that one, for me, it feels good. But some people, it makes them completely miserable. But that's because got to get more stretching in. And then again, to target the other bit here, get that back knee up, chest up, head up, hips push forward. I'm really pushing my hips ahead of me without letting that back knee touch the ground. Keeping that leg locked and extended. After a few breaths, that's good enough. Next, this is the most excruciating one. If you can get to your knees like here, I will flatten my feet like this, getting my knees as wide as possible, using my hands for support, and I just basically try and sit back deeper and deeper. My goal is to see if I can get my hips all the way to the floor. But most people would spend most of the time just in the initial position, and then you're just literally just pushing your butt back, arching it a little bit, and just sitting deep into the stretch. You'll feel it a lot in the groin, but I mean, I'm gonna tell you, it feels great afterwards. And then ease up, nice and easy. That's really all you really need to do for that one. However, if you really like straddle stretches, if you're trying to get higher kicks, if you want bigger gaits in your strides, if you want to be able to jump higher, step higher, straddle stretch is the way to go. Here, I like to say focus first on keeping the back straight. So a lot of people like to do this here, and you have this big hole and then get pretty far. Some people, they can get their forehead all the way to the ground. But let me show you an example. When I was in high school, or not high school, middle school, I was walking to a PE class, and they had this Hall of Fame, basically. All these kids had their name on the wall. So I asked the coach, I was like, hey, how do I get my name on the wall? Why are their names up there? And he was telling me those are all the kids who got their forehead to the floor in the straddle stretch. So they were all able to get forehead completely down to touching. But what I'm realizing after a long time of getting into flexibility is when you're here, you have all this flexibility, and then your hips are kind of staying back. So by starting here, getting your solar plexus, the stomach and chest to kind of lead the way, shoulders back, this is a great starting point, because then your hips are locked in And then as you lean forward, letting gravity do most of the work, now your hips are starting to rotate towards the floor, and you can use your hands for resistance, kind of go elbows down, just like the other one we were just doing, reaching those hands out. And then here, the goal is not to get forehead down where there's space, but to go belly, then chest, then head, and then you can literally turn yourself into a nice little pancake. I did not get there in day one, but within that one school year, I was able to achieve it, and it made a huge difference in, overall flexibility before I got into martial arts. It made it easier for me to get to the higher kicks, the jump kicks. So, love that one, love that one. We're gonna get into the hips now. These are some of my favorite ones. So if you have tight hips, I highly recommend you take this home, practice this literally before you go to bed, when you wake up, after your morning coffee, if you really are diehard coffee fans. But get into this 90-90 position, 50-50, 99. There's different names for it. If you get confused as to how to get into it, just start like a butterfly. Take one leg, flip it over, and reach it behind you. Sometimes this is enough, but you want to try and lean towards that foot. Everybody likes to lean towards the knee, and maybe you feel some stretch that way, but I like to focus on leaning towards the foot, because then I'm working on straightening out my body. I'm not kind of curved and crooked this way, and I'm letting gravity do most of the work. And even with this hand, I'll base on that knee, and I just kind of lean towards that front foot. If you want to make it easier for you, pull that foot closer to the groin. Otherwise, keep it kind of far out and try and get that 90-degree here on that knee. And then as you lean forward, you will get that outer hip sciatica, that glute, everything in that outer hip. It feels amazing. And then you can work on doing different threads under this way. You can work on threading under that way. Whatever seems to work best for you, but this is my go-to stretch. Anybody who has tight hips, this is one of the stretches we go for. From here, we're also going to go back. So I will kind of sit up, keeping the same position, but then to get this hip, the one in the back, this upper area, I will lean back and I will kind of push that hip up. Not like rotating my hips or anything. I'm just kind of trying to think about lifting it as I kind of lean back. And you can kind of go back to your elbow here if you want to. Sometimes it won't take much, but this feels great on that inner hip in front. And then once you feel good, switch, bring the other leg up in front, flip flop, and we're gonna repeat the same way other side. Brace on the knee, hand on the foot, chest or solar plexus towards the foot, and just lean through the belly first. Don't be curving like this. If you want to get the inner groin in those hips areas, you want to push lower abdomen first and then roll from there to the chest. Your goal is to stay over that foot. Now, if you can't get to the foot and you're like, I'm really having a hard time, go ahead and start by the knee where it's easy, and then start to push away towards that other side until you feel that good stretch. And if you're the type of person who ever starts to feel like a Charlie horse coming on, like you feel like your muscles are starting to twist, just reset your body. Like just literally get back to here, lay down completely, and then let your body kind of reset. Some tight muscles, it can get kind of intense, but find a good way that works for you. And then again, you can work on threading one way, threading the other way. Ooh. Then we're gonna hit core. One thing I love to do for the core, cobra. Everybody who does yoga loves the cobra, but I'm not talking just go up and come down. I'm talking when you go up, hands under the shoulders, start to keep the lower abdomen down. I'm gonna try and push toward my shoulders are not up here by my ears. I wanna push through, not let my shoulders forward, peel them back, and then just lift my chin up, and I just wanna kind of breathe and try and settle into it. This is great for realigning the spine. This is real good for trying to get the back nice and stretched. If you have a really tight lower back, this has helped me when I had lower back pain. And then you can give it a little twist depending on how much your back can take, just nice and subtle, shifting one way, shifting the other way, and then coming down. The other one that I like to do, this one's a little bit more intense, but I think it's great because it really targets different areas of the hip. So you can start literally like this, take one leg, I'm gonna bend it, and I'm just gonna kind of reach it towards the other side. And I'm just gonna try and see if I can touch the floor. Now, if you start to pull up or your chest comes up, then what you can do is take the arm, flatten it out here. This hand brace it here. And then now as I reach, that shoulder kind of stays down, and that helps keep my shoulder to shoulder lower towards the ground and makes that twist a little bit more intense. But if you're really flexible, then kind of push the hips out, almost like you're arching the back. This one can be intense, so go slow, but luckily you can kind of ease in based on how you're rotating your upper torso into the stretch. Kind of goes nice and slow on your way back. Sometimes if your back's not used to these kind of movements, going back quick can be a little intense. And then again here, bend the leg, lift that leg up off the ground, start to rotate the hips. When I plant my knee down, I don't want my knee to be down. I want to point my knee up. And then again, just kind of resting. Exhale. Try and relax. Let the muscles settle. Today I did a lot of hip, a lot of legs. So this is intense for me, but it feels great afterwards. That limberness that you feel is worth it. And again, nice and slow on your way back. And then a few things for hips. If you like to do transitional type movements, one thing I like to do, and this really works the hip through the whole range of motion. Let me just give you guys an adjustment here. So if I kind of go into like a Cossack squat kind of position, I'm gonna go from here, I'm gonna turn, trying to keep that leg straight to the toes, continue rotating here. And then in this position, I don't want to be resting down where my hips touching and my shoulders up with my ear. Push down through the arm, keep extension through that back leg, and then this is where I'm feeling that stretch for me. You might feel in different areas, but this for me is great. And then this other hand and that knee in front, I will grab, but I'll show you guys that when I switch sides. So let's say if I'm on the other side here, in this position, start here, deep, wide squat, trying to get this knee to the outside, hands on the inside. Turn to this position. Then I will continue here, and I will rest, pushing through the shoulder, trying to keep the hip just above the ground, and sometimes even grabbing this knee here and just kind of pulling yourself close to it, or even pushing to twist a little bit deeper. But as long as that bottom leg is extended, this feels great on this hip right here where the hip kind of connects with that side. Question. This will be saved. This is going to be going in my live feeds, so it might not be right into videos, but if you go on my channel, you should be able to find this in lives, and you can just watch it over and over, share with your friends. Anybody you know who has like tight hips, tight back, tight shoulders, not very flexible in the legs, maybe they can barely lift their knee and hold it at hip height. This is just a great one to go through, just because if you can get in the routine of doing this, not daily, but at least every other day or 3 times a week, twice a week, build something to start and then get more consistent with it, because when it becomes a daily practice, eventually you will see tons of progress. Next, we're going to go pike stretches. We're going to start going from the hips into this lower back a little bit more. Again, we want to start by keeping the back straight. So we don't want to be curved like this. We want to start pushing the stomach forward. And the way I'm going to do this is by grabbing here. Not underneath, because I want my knees to stay down. So I don't want to lift the knees up. But I'm going to anchor here. Keep my shoulders peeled back. This can be the hardest for most people. So this could be a long time, just spending lots of time just staying here. But then once you start to kind of pull my legs inward with my arms, then I can start to pull myself forward. Every exhale, sink deeper. And then again, farther. And notice how my elbows aren't pulling out this way. My elbows are pulling in this way. Each time, sinking deeper and deeper until you can fold in half. This is hard, but it is so good for that back. And then let's get into sides. Let me double check. I got a couple more comments here. Okay, cool. Lifting weights right now, so I need this in the morning for sure. Honestly, do this after you finish lifting weights. I just finished a workout, and this is why I'm doing it now. It's one of the ways that people like Bruce Lee were able to do like a bodybuilder's type of workout, but stay so thin, have lots of muscle detail, but maintain that flexibility and range of motion. He didn't get so big where he couldn't even touch his shoulders. When but my sensei was training with some wrestlers back when she was, you know, I mean, she still does martial arts, but there was a time where they invited some like wrestlers in town, and one of the guys, he was so big, like he could barely touch his shoulders. Like the guy would had an itch on his back and he couldn't scratch it. He was so huge, and he was thinking like, all right, I'm gonna like pick this little girl up, I'm gonna slam her down, and she was running circles around him like a squirrel on a tree. And it's a pretty funny story, but it definitely goes to show that when you really work that flexibility immediately after, the day after, and for some people who experience the major parts of soreness after workout the second day, this is really good. So you can go straddle, you can do butterfly, you can sit however you want to, but the goal though is to kind of keep your hips anchored. So what I like to do is just have one leg out like this, and then the knee that's bent, that one's gonna come up. I'm just gonna cover my ear, and I'm just gonna let gravity do most of the work. I'm gonna keep this hand here because I want this hip to stay down, and I'm just gonna lean towards that foot and create length. So I'm not just kind of falling or hanging, I'm reaching through the air, reaching towards an invisible wall. And then I'm just gonna kind of find an anchor point. If you can't get an anchor point, you can literally grab your wrist, add more intensity, give yourself a few breaths, let your muscles settle. You don't want your muscles to be too tense throughout it. So give yourself 3 to 5 deep breaths each stretch, and then they can kind of settle. Same thing on the other side. Here, nice and easy. Cover the ear, let myself fall, keep that opposite hip anchored, and then if you can get to your toes, grab those toes, and then I'm gonna see if I can get that bottom shoulder in front more. And then from here, this is pretty good, but you can intensify it. If you're really flexible, start turning towards the ceiling a little bit, looking up towards the sky, trying to turn that torso upwards a bit more, and you can get really intense on your obliques and the sides. Ugh. And then one of my favorite ones, if you do lots of shoulder and upper back, one of the exercises I would recommend is doing this one here. So this isn't done very often that I see, but this one does wonders for me. So if I'm here, depending on how your hands are comfortable, you can plant one finger towards your butt, fingers towards the outside, just find out what works for you. And I just sit back, bending my arms away. I don't want to keep my elbows to the outside. I want to try and bring them closer together. But just enough here, you'll feel a nice stretch in the armpits. You can shift towards one side, get a little bit more intensity over there, shift towards the other side, also more intensity on that side there. But just this kind of rocking back and forth gets real good in the shoulders. A little bit of torso rotation, shifting the shoulders ahead of the collarbone, or at least trying to think of reaching them forward past the collarbone as you breathe. And then if you're ever doing downward dog, you could use downward dog to stretch the calves based on how you like bend one leg and straighten the other. So the straight leg is stretching the calf. But the other part I like downward dog for is getting the upper back area. If you don't want to do downward dog, you could literally just use a wall. And if you guys want me to show you how to use a wall for this stretch, let me know. It's like literally just comment it now if you're watching. But I want to try to get my head past my arms, reaching through, and then I'm going to work on rotating my shoulders out and in, rotating them out and in. So I'm thinking like turning my elbows to the outside and then bringing them more together. And then you can kind of lift one, twist the other, just like when we're reaching back. A little bit of torso rotation. But if you had wings, think of like you're flapping them. You're pinching your shoulder blades together behind you, and then you're creating some distance here. But these kind of movements will be really good for those upper back muscles. And then if you have lots of tension still, maybe you want to target more this part of your shoulder. Thread the needle is an easy go-to, at least I think so. Starting on all fours, just take one arm, reach it through, and sometimes this here might do it for you. If you need more of a stretch, I will try and flatten between the shoulder and my neck. So I will plant my head down, I'll start rotating to the top of my shoulder, and now I can get a decent neck stretch. And then depending on how I'm reaching and how I'm turning, there's a different type of way versus just resting in the position where you can add a little bit more intensity to the stretch. But this arm has to keep reaching, and then you just keep applying more downward pressure, twisting just a little bit. This arm is mostly anchoring. I'm not really pushing. I'm just kind of keeping my body in place. And the same thing other side. Ooh. And then let me see real quick. Would you recommend easier stretches if we're closer to that wrestler? I would definitely say start with the easy ones. That way you have some kind of foundation, but look for ways to intensify it. So for example, let me think of like a stretch. Say like the straddle stretch. If you can't get all the way down, maybe this here is like where you're at. Maybe you can't even touch the ground. Just start by bringing your hands here and working on this posture. Sometimes from this posture, you'll feel enough of a stretch in the inner groin. If you're feeling a stretch, you're building a foundation. And then from there, then you can work on intensify it. Work on like rotating the hips and to be able to kind of lean forward more and more. Over time, it will come, but that's the part of the consistency that just takes like that work from the person, the athlete, to really like stretch daily, every other day at least. And then let's see, another stretch you could do for the arms and shoulders, just reaching the hand up, trying to get it behind the back. And then if you do lots of triceps, this one is great for stretching the triceps. If you really work those triceps really hard, because you know that only working the biceps isn't enough to get bigger arms, but you also got to work the triceps so you get that good width. Triceps, you can target by just trying to reach the back of your head or neck, grabbing with the other arm, and then literally just applying some pulling pressure, and that alone will stretch that tricep real good, and the shoulder. And I'm not just kind of pulling this way, my elbow is kind of reaching up, so I'm lifting my arm up as I'm pulling, kind of creating length along that whole side. And then switch. And so that is pretty much one of my favorite routines of stretching that I go through. There are some other stretches that I could show you guys. So we have maybe like 3 or so more minutes before I hop off this live, where you guys can like ask questions like, how do you stretch this? What would I stretch if I was working this muscle? If you're feeling tightness in certain areas, like, you know, ask me some different stretches that I could maybe show you guys, excuse me, while I have some time. And then I'll be happy to dive in. Ooh. So yeah, comment time here at the end. Let's see if I can get my water. So I can hydrate. Oh, I can say, if your goal is ever to do the splits, that lizard lunge stretch that I did. So when you are just this right, yeah. These little tripods are so weird. Okay, so when you are in this stretch here, a lot of times this might be where a lot of people are, and you can see this like angle here where kind of like this is flat, but then the bottom one kind of goes down. The deeper you get your hips into that stretch, this here, that will get you more to being able to do the splits. So if you can get deep enough, then when you straighten that leg out, as you drop, you can eventually pop into the splits. So if you're training for splits without having to actually drop into them, that's a way you can do that. Same thing with the other leg here. If I'm here in this position, you can see this angle. As I work on pushing my hips lower and lower here, that's where I'm able to kind of drop into the splits on that side. Same thing with the straddle here, going in the middle. The more I can rotate my hips to turn to face the ground, the easier it'll be for me to drop into the side splits here. I can't lift my hands up yet, but goals. Always about setting goals for yourself and finding ways to meet them. All right, we got a little bit more time left. Does anybody have any final questions for me before I sign out? Any questions at all? Throw them in the comments. I'd be super happy to answer them for you guys while I have this moment. And then maybe I can show you guys the view before I sign out. This is where we are. Shade Duty said, hey man, I just wanted to say you're one of my heroes. Been watching your tricking videos for about 10 years now, and I'm happy you're still killing it. Keep it real. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, because I do always wonder every once in a while from time to time who still watches, who's still learning from my tutorials that are now like ancient scroll knowledge, because there's so many free runners, coaches, and gyms now who are inspiring the new generation of athletes. But yeah, happy to help, always happy to find ways. I am still learning, I am still growing. Now that I'm 36, I'm trying to look at what are the people who are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s who can move really good. What are they doing to like keep them mobile and strong and flexible? And I'm realizing movement is key. I'm realizing 3 things: flexibility, mobility, and strength are part of their everyday exercises and workouts. And if they don't do like conventional exercises, they're doing something that challenges their cardio through the strength. So that's why I got into like the animal flow, the creative movement. Breakdancing is also another good way to get into that. But those who do conventional things like weightlifting and stuff like that, the stretching, the post-workout mobility and exercising, all the flexibility training, really like not just doing the stretch, but setting in the stretch, sinking deeper with every exhale, that is what will bring that well-rounded kind of feeling to your exercise, because then you're not just pumping iron, but you're pumping iron, you're stretching the muscles, releasing the lactic acid, and maintaining your mobility and flexibility. But I appreciate everybody's support. I'm going to sign off now. Don't be afraid to comment on any of the videos, ask any questions. If you come back to this and you're watching it later on and you're like, oh, you know what, I just had a random question, throw it in the comments. I'll see it. I'll respond to it. You can find me on TikTok or Instagram. Direct message me with any videos that you guys are wanting to share if you're having trouble with something, or just keep moving. Honestly, that's the thing. If I had something to say before the end of this live, I would say, do not stop moving. Never leave the playground. And as always, if you know what's coming, you know what's coming. Stay positive. See you guys.